first section that we're going to talk about, entering the government marketplace. We have a few bullet points on the screen here as far as identifying your core mission, key differentiators, vision. Let me go around the room, and I'll start ladies first, start Gloria and Hilary. Talk a little bit about what you see as the key things that companies need to pay attention to as they enter into the government marketplace.
This is Gloria. One of the areas that I see many of the mistakes made is simply trying to be too many things at once, trying to be all things to all people. And having small businesses, large businesses, any size business really identify a clear, succinct niche that is important to the government. That is really the main challenge.
Yes, I would actually ditto what Gloria just said. And also I'd like to clarify when Michael mentioned earlier, he talked about the response from our poll and that 38% of those listening today are asking about marketing. And one thing that I find in all my consulting is there's this huge disconnect between marketing and what people really mean is business development. Mm-hmm. Marketing is just collateral material, website presence. It's the marketing the name of your business. It's not actually winning contracts. It's the marketing that contributes to it. It's a component of business development. So it'd be very interesting to see if Michael clarifies with the audience how many firms actually are interested in business development tactics and techniques today. But I would actually ditto what Gloria just said, particularly with the differentiator. One thing I've noticed is the companies that have a clear and very concise type message as to what they do. So many companies entering either into particularly IT for the government and now a lot of cybersecurity for the government are all over the map. Your message needs to be clear and distinct, and particularly depending on which of the armed forces, the messaging needs to be different because there are different different needs that they have, and they like to feel, if you're going after Army, you're going after Marines, you're going after Coast Guard, make your message very tailored to them. They don't want to be lumped in with everyone else. And same thing on the civilian side and as well as DoD.
Yeah, I'll go back, and actually Hilary and Gloria both talked about it, but back to the earlier point about the 38% wanting to successfully market themselves to the government. What I read into that was exactly what Hilary indicated, relationships. It wasn't really the marketing piece, it was actually developing the relationships to be able to get out there and actually have a conversation with someone that was meaningful so that they would take an interest in what you're doing and how you might be able to work with them. So I won't dwell on that right now, but again, from entering the marketplace, and I think they both hit on it very well. I think one of the biggest things that a lot of companies make the mistake of, small and large, they come into this and they're, Mark has talked about over the years, they're bedazzled by the numbers. They see the billions of dollars in contracts and so forth, and they come into this swinging for the fence for the first time out. And I think a lot of companies need to start a lot smaller. Look for those smaller, pieces of opportunity, that may be 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. To get their foot in the door, get their bona fides, as it were, so that somebody has their level of confidence in them, and then work their way up from there.
Yeah, the big thing here is when you're coming into the market. American Express released a study a year or two ago. We've all known this anecdotally over the years, but American Express finally came up with the real numbers. It takes 19 and a half months to win your first business. During that time, you've got to educate your staff. You've got to educate the market on your availability. You have to educate the market on exactly what your competitive advantage is, why people should use you. There's expenditures on the front end, and we've always said 18 to 24 months coming in. American Express nailed it at 9. But focus, as has just Guy just said, focus on one or two agencies max, figure out what they buy and how they buy and where you fit in that particular food chain. Not everybody's going to buy off the GSA schedule, and if you're an IT firm, number one, you're not a systems integrator if you're two people in a basement. Number two, there's 5,000 plus companies on Schedule 70. What are you going to do to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's there?
Bob Lofeld, I'd add a couple of thoughts to it. I always recoil a bit at somebody saying that we're going to enter the government market. It's kind of like saying I'm going to live in North America. It is so huge.
Yeah, right.
And if you're going to come into this market, let's begin by doing some research to understand what organizations are likely to buy what it is you want to sell. There's over 1,100 buying organizations in the federal government. And to maybe your surprise as an outsider, they don't all talk to each other. So you have to be very specific about where you want to go in order to make this a rewarding experience. It can very quickly become a frustrating experience of meet and greet and nothing happens. Do your homework.
Hey, let me chime in as well, Mike. This is Jimmy talking. You know, the other thing to play off, everyone is saying the exact same thing. Long before I was an author and a consultant, I was a quota-carrying salesperson and had to deal with a lot of realities that many of you out there do. You always want to go back, and some of the best advice I got when I started in this game over 20 years ago is follow the money. Right now, I specialize in technology. You should be looking at the Exhibit 53s. You should be studying the budget. You should know the difference between the DME money and steady state in your account, and you should be following that trail. And one of the things that I work with clients, not only researching, but, pushing it through the doorway on is, once you figure out where that money is going to be, I think these numbers are right. It takes a while to introduce your value proposition, find the decision makers, and close the deal. But again, my big thing is, read the Exhibit 53s, read the 300, the business cases, and you will get yourself in a very good position to understand what your government customer needs from your company.
Right. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah.
And just speak up for the microphone.
Mike, I would just add a lot of companies sadly make some assumptions that the discriminators or differentiators that make their products or services successful in the commercial market will work in the government market.
Right.
And to make that assumption that the government customer has the same needs, requirements, and hot buttons as a commercial customer is wrong. And it's an easy assumption to make, and a lot of companies make those assumptions.
This is Jim McCarthy from AOC Key Solutions. The question being put to us is, what is some of the key things to enter the market? My number one key thing would suggest, I would use the term laser focus. Mm-hmm. There's a tendency on of all companies of all sizes to cast too wide of a net, try to be all things to all people. And our problem is not that we have too few opportunities, that we have too many. And it's better to put a focused slice on something that you can really exceed at, where you do have the credentials and you do have a value proposition offer, versus trying to be all things and bid anything that comes in the door, or to, as I say, cast a wide net over opportunities in hopes that somehow lightning will strike and you'll win one of those things. I'm not saying that it's never happened in the history of mankind, but I am saying that you're better off with a narrow focus where you do well than a broad focus where you're diffused and distracted by so many things.
Sure. So we just did a quick poll just to ask people what they think out of entering the government market they need to focus on. And the vast majority of people, 56% said, focusing their pipeline on opportunities that are more applicable to their company. But in order to do that, they really need to identify their core mission in terms of who they are. We've talked a little bit about that, but I'm curious to get your feedback. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, I just want to focus on all of the hospital construction opportunities that are out there, but it's another thing to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what makes me different from everybody else. I'm curious to get your comments, because you all consult and deal with people on a daily basis, so go ahead, chime in.
I do have a story to tell on this. Years ago, I was working with a Canadian company that wanted to get in the newly formed Department of Homeland Security, and everyone can date it there. And this was a company that had done successful things for Harley-Davidson, Campbell's Soup. They had a great business intelligence solution. And essentially, what we had to do is, when we were gutting through the government, looking at, first we had to find, where there was a need. And when we found that in Homeland, because they were integrating a lot of different systems at the time, we went in and pitched a couple of CIOs, and how we presented to them was probably one of the more unique ways that we've done it, but we understood the problem so well that we were able to walk in a few minutes and tell them how we could impact them, the results we got in the commercial. And when they saw this company solution, I remember I remember them looking at us and saying, here's what you need to do. You need to go to CSC, who is the prime, tell them I sent you and said to add it on. So as I'm backing up a gear, whether you're a product company or you're a seated company and you're trying to penetrate this market, figure out where there'd be an interest fixing the need of the government. Figure out who's in there, what they're doing. Always present to the government customer first. Get their buy-in that they want what you have, and then they will a lot of times tell you how you can get to them. And I've done this a number of times in my career through unsolicited proposals, through going in direct. It's not easy. It's hard. You're going to get a lot of objections. But again, unfortunately I can't see everyone from California, but the gentleman who said have a laser focus. Know what your unique selling proposition is. It's not about you. It's not about your company's size. It's not about all your quals. It's about the problem that you fix for the government and making sure that the decision makers know it.
Yeah. One of the things I think it's going to get beat to death today is going to be market research. And it's going to be doing that advanced research to figure out what space you're going to play in. And I think everyone's going to touch on it and has touched on it at some level already. But again, going back to some of the challenges a lot of companies have coming into this, and it's not just small companies, it's across the board. I've got mid-tier and large companies out west that are trying to break in now. They do manufacturing, and they're having the same issues. And that is market research today is so much easier than what it was 15, 20 years ago. When I came into space, back in the 80s, the way that you did market research or the way that you communicated with the government was based on filling out your SF-129 mailing list form for each organization you wanted to work with, getting the CBD delivered by fax or by letter carrier, and being able to. There was no CCR, there was no FedBizOps, any of those things. Well, with the onset of all these web-based systems now, you got the FFATA FSRS system, you've got USA Spending, which is dumbing down FPDSNG and so forth. Information is so readily available for a company to go out and at least get a fairly comprehensive preliminary view of who's buying what, how they're buying it, who they're buying it from, and be able to at least establish some position of what direction they're going to walk in. And so a lot of folks don't do that, whether they just don't know or it's laziness. I don't know which one it is, but a lot of companies just don't do that initial work to figure out what direction to go in.
Market research is the next section we're going to dive into, and really quickly, one of the things we've asked people on the slide is to articulate their most frustrating experience they've had in trying to enter into the government marketplace. And so I had one person who just wrote in saying the most frustrating experience is no response from the customer, no callback, no meetings, no shows. I would like to say that's a unique experience in the government marketplace.
Customer.
I've had the government hang up on me before. I do a lot of cold calling. Don't take it personally.
So just to kind of close the loop on this discussion as far as entering the marketplace, and I think Jimmy, I think it was you and I who even talked about this, but I know everyone has experience with this. Rejection, patience, and tenacity is important, but dealing with rejection has got to be a really important skill to master in some way, right?
If you can't take rejection, don't get in this marketplace.
But I think the other thing that, and I will tell you this, even though I'm a consultant, I practice what I preach every day with my clients. So I'm in there. I get so many rejections, but it's a couple things you have to understand, and I say this in the most positive spirit that I can. Not all bureaucrats are motivated by the same thing. There are a lot of all-stars in government. I can name them. There are a lot of great people in there that would do well at IBM or CSC. They just happen to be all-stars in the government. There are a lot of people that are motivated very differently. And generally, what you've got to be ready for is when you get an objection, don't be afraid to push back. But remember, we hear all these stories, about the government being, $100 toilet seats and hammers. They're the smartest buyer in the world. They have a ton of people coming, and you're going to have to be extremely aggressive, velvet harpoon. And, a lot of the stuff, I know we have a series that we did with GovCon at one point, and it was just, we strictly dealt with how to handle objections. And I know that's out on the internet somewhere, but don't get discouraged. keep at it. Always mind your manners. And if you want to sideline with me, I can probably give you some pointers around there. But there are a few, tricks of the trade to deal with objections.
All right, really quick, because I know you want to make comments. I want to get to market research next. So go ahead, Bob and then Hilary.
Yeah, I listened to the discussion about rejection. I want to take an opposite view because I don't think it's that bad. I think we have a great government and they're interested in what we do in the private sector, but they're interested if we can help them solve their problems. Yeah. So if you go in pandering to say, I'm a small business, I've never done business with the government, but I'd like to take home some of that $100 million you're giving out, chances are you're going to experience a lot of rejection. Yeah. But if you can go in and talk substantively about an issue that they have and a solution for it, you'll get huge acceptance. Yep. And it's that discussion that leads to business and nothing else. It's that discussion that gets you business.
Exactly.
Is that what you were going to say, Hilary?
And I was just going to say something a bit different when you said about how to handle rejection. The way I have every single client handle if they don't win something or rejection is, if you don't, I was saying about rejection, the way to handle rejection is that anytime anybody loses anything, there's more than a 50% chance that whoever is chosen to be the current incumbent is not necessarily going to do a great job, and or there's a reason they were selected that you weren't, and or there's another opportunity down the road. One of the best ways to build a relationship with anyone in government is when you have lost, not to take umbrage, but to positively go back, to ask, to get a good diagnostic. Everybody should know why they win and why they lose by specific criteria, because that is the way to win at the next opportunity. And then you will find somebody in the government will be amazed you take the time to actually spend time with them when there's no money. Because Bob's point is everybody goes to them for money. When they don't think you're looking for the money because now you lost anyway, build a relationship. If you have a long-term perspective for your company, which you should, a year from now, 2 years from now, you can be very high on their list. And the second point I wanted to make was also something Bob said earlier. He said about, I'm moving to North America, it's a big place. Somebody once said also about Europe, the minute I'll believe there is a Europe is when Henry Kissinger said, when there's one number to call. So there's no such thing as Europe. I would say this about the government. I've always said there isn't a government, and government buys nothing. Every single thing is still bought by a person. So the guy's point about the relationship is they are just like you and me. What people tend to do is when you get something back I find that clients, when they get something back that's very anonymous and very bureaucratic, they want to answer it in the same speak. And I say no, take a very personal approach to it, because you actually, over time, in a very pleasant way, can break down that bureaucratic front, and you'll find it's actually still a person sending that email.
Absolutely.
Okay. So for the person who says, I've done the market research, I know my core differentiators are what I'm all about, it's making that first contact. The key is build that relationship. How do they...
Even when you lose. Keep building that relationship.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on into market research and planning. So on the slide, you see where we've talked